I have a few things that I want to say. One is that I'm not a transparency absolutist, and I'll explain why. Secondly, that I have some concerns about what I would call cursory transparency that I think in some cases is actually worse than nothing. And finally, that I want to see the transparency efforts in foundation land focus more on the link to effectiveness and achievement of goals. When I say I'm not a transparency absolutist, I think that the effect of us doing that would be that, first of all, fewer foundations would utilize the tool, because who wants to do something for the first time without any knowledge of what it's going to look like, committed to making it public, knowing that the data might be disaggregated at the program level, at the program officer level, and why would you feel anything but defensive and worried about that? And if you want people to productively engage information in order to improve, you have to actually bring down the level of defensiveness somewhat, and you have to allow people some sense of control. So what I argued, for example, in our early board meetings where we debated this new tool that we had is, let's get people using it, and let's let this happen naturally and hope that foundation leaders will choose to make public these results. And 40 plus now have. But some of those who haven't posted the results on their website have made concerted and impressive efforts to improve and have improved dramatically their relationships with grantees. So I don't think there's necessarily always a one-to-one correlation between transparency and effective engagement in terms of learning and improvement. What I think is really core is, what are you trying to do, how are you trying to do it, and how are you gauging progress, and what do you know about that? So the goals, strategies, and indicators. We know from our grantee surveys, tens of thousands of surveys of, now it's 260 or so foundations, that one of the lower rated dimensions in that survey, and one of the most powerful predictors of ratings of a foundation's impact by its grantees, is clarity of communication of the foundation goals and strategies. Grantees want to know, they need to know what you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, and how they fit in. So I'd like to see more emphasis on that, the what, the how, and the how will we know, the goals, strategies, and indicators, and less emphasis on things like whether the bylaws are up there. And when you know something about performance, about programmatic effectiveness, that's where I think transparency really matters. I think it's essentially morally indefensible to know that something you funded isn't working, to know that others might be trying to do the same thing and not to share those results. That's where transparency and effectiveness come together and go hand in hand. But I think there are also times where you know an entire sort of approach or intervention that you've funded that's been carried out by a number of different organizations hasn't worked. I think you got to follow the lead in those cases of foundations like RWJF and Irvine and Hewlett that have been open about those kinds of issues. And that part of being a foundation is there's a lot of privilege and opportunity that comes with that, and if a little bit of negative press attention comes your way as a result, I mean, I'm not a media communications person. All I would say is the answer is we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. We're being open about this because it's the right thing to do, and we don't want people to make the mistake of funding something that doesn't work. And if you want to take us to the woodshed for that, for the fact that you think we should have known that at the outset, well, so be it. But right now, the moral question we have is whether to be open so that good money doesn't follow bad, or whatever the expression is. And I think foundation leaders should be prepared to then take whatever criticism comes their way. And then I think the question becomes, regardless of type, corporate, family, private, community, what are you trying to do? And does achieving as much impact as you think you can with the resources you have motivate you? If it does, then I think at least the basic questions are the same, which is, what are you trying to do, how are you trying to do it, and how will you know along the way? And there aren't right answers in terms of goal selection because it's values dependent and people are going to make a lot of different choices. But once you've selected those goals, I think you can drive toward good assessment. And one size doesn't fit all when it comes to assessment because there's no universal measure. The right measures are dependent on what the goals are. There is no analog to profitability or return on investment. And I would be the first to say, and I say it every chance I get, that the grantee perception report should never be viewed as the be-all and end-all of assessment. I think it should be viewed as a component of a larger assessment process in the context of your goals and strategies. I think that if we believe that foundations, one of the roles of foundations, one of the values that they play is that they can take on issues other actors in our society can't or won't, then sometimes what they're going to be doing is not going to be popular. And coming back to the notion of not being a transparency absolutist, even though I said, and I believe that in general, it's better to be clear and open and transparent about your goals and your strategies. I think we can all think of particular instances, if you're working on an issue like gay rights or certain environmental issues, where it might not be smart from an effectiveness perspective to be completely transparent about your strategies, right? You actually have opposition who are working toward goals that are directly contradictory to your own. And so I think that's part of what I'm trying to argue here is like transparency is good. Foundations are in general not nearly transparent enough. There are some examples of foundations that I think have been leaders in being really transparent. But we need to look at this in a context-specific circumstance and recognize that there are going to be moments where being transparent about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it is not consistent with being effective.